All right, guys, as you know, we have to meet for our discussion. I'm Mr. Meskine, Mr. Pachugan, Mr. Gentry, Mr. Holzberg, and Ms. Knerfel. And yeah, let's just get right to it. So for my question, I have it on page 245 and line 183, 184 concerning Mary and Eve. Milton writes, "So spake this oracle, then verified, when Jesus, son of Mary, second Eve." That kind of stood out to me because Mary, we all know, is kind of being that woman without sin. And I found it interesting because Eve is the first woman ever, and we consult her with being the first woman to sin. So I'm just wondering if Milton refers to her literally as Eve, or just made in Eve's image, or that's just, I don't know, that's what I thought about it. But.
Well, I'll say something about that, because I know second Eve, it sounds to me like Mary is just like the Eve that was supposed to happen, because Mary was sinless, and so it's supposed to be like the second Eve, but,
Yeah.
I guess it's like, she's just like the completion of like Eve who was supposed to be sinless.
Uh-huh.
And then so I feel like that's just...
So almost like Eve was like, not a failure, but like an experiment, and Mary was the final product.
Yeah, Mary was supposed to happen.
Okay.
Yeah.
No, it's fine.
Yeah, she was basically Eve 2.0 in my opinion.
Okay.
But another thing there's a big difference between them because Eve is supposed to be like the mother of like everybody, but Mary is like the mother of Jesus, Son of God.
Oh, that's true.
So I think that's a huge difference. I don't think God would like screw that up with like anybody to be the mother of his son. So.
Yeah, that's true.
Got it.
It would have to be somebody who's sinless, right?
Yeah.
I think that like Eve brought humankind to life. Like Eve was a mother of all human, pretty much. Mary was a mother of Christ, and Christ in a human body. That's what I mean. So
Okay.
Yeah.
it's like-
Yeah, like Mary, I kind of agree too. Like Mary is pretty much Eve 2.0, like kind of like the perfected Eve. But like the way I kind of saw them together is since like Eve is the mother to humanity and Mary is like the mother to Jesus, who's like the savior of humanity. I just saw like a parallel between them like that. So when I like read the line initially, when Jesus, son of Mary, second Eve, I kind of read it as like son of Mary and then like second son of Eve because it just kind of like follows down like the line. I don't know if that makes.
No, that does. That's an interesting way to look at it. And what I find interesting too is like this is the beginning of time, and Mary is being mentioned. So like here's this mention of Mary, and she's just being like thrown into this plan that hasn't gone into effect. That like hasn't. Yeah, I guess we're in book 10. But so like they already committed the sin, but now Mary is already in the works. It just kind of like shows the idea of how God's plan, like everything is laid out, like straight out to like Mary being sinless and having Jesus and stuff like that. So I found that
Yeah, if I were to answer my own question, I think Ms. Knerfel brought up a good point that Mary is what Eve was supposed to be, without sin and all that, and supposed to be that good companion to man and very supportive of whatever her companion had to do, and thus, raising Jesus and all that, and letting Jesus do what he was supposed to do for man. So
Right.
I thought that's what it was supposed to be, and
Yeah, I kind of wanted just to go off what Ms. Knerfel said about Mary and God's plan. Mary was mentioned in this part of the book, and this is way before Mary, showed up into the picture, and it just kind of implies that God had a plan, and it's also implied in book 3 when Jesus talked about how he's going to kill death, so like mankind wouldn't suffer. So like my question is like, did God really have like this grand plan, or did he have like a backup plan for like everything?
I mean, it seems like he definitely had a backup plan, because we saw book 3, even though we read it a little later than most. It was like before Adam and Eve even ate the apple. It was just like, okay, so we're gonna send down my son. Actually, I don't know if he says the word son or not. I don't know if I can find it in here. Oh yeah, it does actually on page 66. Line 166, it says, "O son, in whom my soul hath chief delight." So he's like talking to the son in such a way that like, okay, so this is going to happen, like, so you're going to have to do. So it is like a plan B almost. Definitely.
Yeah, I I think the God is all-knowing, so he could foreshadow that coming, and in this way he let people choose, let his children Adam and Eve choose for themselves. It's like a gift from God to the people, freedom of choice.
I don't know, I feel like it's kind of hard to believe that he needed a plan B, being an all-knowing God. I feel like he should have known, like, this isn't going to work or this is going to work, therefore, just in case, I'm going to have this in my back pocket. You know, I feel like he knew, like, death was going to be there, and he knew his son was going to go down and, you know, die for all of our sins. So I don't know. From going on what you guys said, I find it hard to believe that God had that backup plan. God needed it.
But God still gave us a choice. And so, like, he needed something to do, like, okay, so you're going to choose this, you're going to choose that. So here's what's going to happen in either case. You know, he knows which one we're going to choose, you know, because he can see that, but he doesn't have, like, a say in it, you know. So, I mean, it's just, like, almost just like there's this divergence, I guess, and, like, the plan is just, like, this is what was going to happen, but, you know, like, I'd have to fix what's about to happen, you know, with, like, the case of, like, sin and, like, all this kind of stuff, where we are now.
Yeah, I definitely think, like, I'm kind of under the same impression as you are, that, like, since God is, like, this all-knowing being or whatever, that he doesn't necessarily need, like, a backup plan for anything, because he knows exactly, like, what's going to happen. But I think he still, like, presents the choice there, because he wants, like, that element of it. He wants, like, the free will choice aspect. So, like, it might seem almost like it's, like, a backup plan, but it's really just, it's not, like, I don't know, I don't see it so much as a backup plan, more it's just, like, an added, like, element to create, like, the choice aspect. Does that make sense?
That's true.
Yeah, you know, Adam and Eve, you know, did learn from their mistake at the end, you know, it seems like no matter what would happen, they were going to come back to God anyways.
Yeah, I feel like that was God's plan all along, for them to have that choice, even though, like we all said, that he knows what they're going to do. But like we discussed in class, it's almost like that illusion that we want to give Adam and Eve that choice. Yeah.
It's like the illusion of free will.
Exactly.
Yeah, but then the question comes up, like, do we need that choice? Do we need that, you know, like, we discussed this a little bit in class about, like, you know, we talked about how, like, maybe you need the choice to, like, you know, like, do the bad and then figure out, oh, okay, so that was bad and we have the right and wrong or whatever. But, like, shouldn't reason be enough?
Yeah, but without choice, we wouldn't be humans anymore. Choice makes us humans, I feel like.
That's actually true. And you know, I was always, you know, in my life, you know, we always learn from our mistakes. And you know, Adam and Eve like understood how like God is great. You know, they live in paradise, but I don't think they like truly appreciated and understood how good they have it. And it wasn't until after the fall, especially at the end of book 10, when they're like praying to God, like that's when they kind of knew, like, you know,
We screwed up.
yeah, we screwed up. We're gonna go back to God. You know, we're gonna be better than what we were.
Okay, so my question is kind of related to, like, the plan thing. Was the devil really necessary in God's plan? You know, the devil played an important part in, you know, kind of like making Eve eat the apple. And so I want to open up the question to you guys, if, you know, the devil had to be there and, like, be there to sway Adam and Eve.
Yes, I think devil was necessary to demonstrate evil in a character, in a figure. So, like humans, Adam and Eve would choose between good intentions as God, and bad intentions as evil.
And so,
As said.
okay, I just see it more as like, you know, like humans and, like, you know, their flawed logic. You know, I mean, as we saw, you know, when the devil tempted Eve, you know, like she kind of just regressed until, you know, like she just kept on doubting and doubting God. And I just wonder, like, you know, if the devil was even necessary to, like, tempt her into doubting God, you know, because I mean, reason alone obviously doesn't get us hardly anywhere. So I was just wondering, you know, even if the devil wasn't there, would they eventually maybe sin?
You know,
Go ahead.
I was just gonna say, you know, the devil, Satan in the story, I always viewed him as a tragic character. You know, in book 4 in the beginning, when he like, you know, sneaks past one of the angels and he's like in the garden and he's like, he kind of thinks to himself, do I really want to do this? And then he, you know, kind of says, well, you know, even if I, you know, try to redeem myself, I'd be sent back to hell anyway. So I'm just gonna continue this path of evil. and going off that, I can't find any example or anything or anyone to represent evil to God's goodness.
Yeah.
So I don't know if he was necessary, but like I don't think evil would have been like a big deal in the story.
Quite the same.
It wouldn't have been the same.
Yeah.
I kind of have like the same idea. Like I agree that Satan is a tragic character. I don't know necessarily if he's like necessary for sin to become a reality, if he's like required to be there to tempt Eve for sin to even come about. But I think Satan as kind of like a being and as a character was necessary because like Satan's choice, at least as like in this book, it doesn't really seem like he has a choice. Like when you're talking about, he talks about how he's never going back to heaven because he's destined on this path to be bad, and how even if he did go back to heaven, he would end up becoming bad again anyway. Like I read that as he doesn't so much like have a choice to be bad, but rather he's like embracing his fate like to be evil. Like it's not like he's choosing whether like, okay, I can choose to be good and like no matter what, like I'm gonna make good choices and be a good Satan, good angel, whatever.
Good Satan.
Yeah. But it's almost like, okay, there's no chance of me being good ever. If there's no chance, then like I don't really have a choice. Like I have to embrace being evil. So I don't know if Satan is necessary to tempt Eve in order for Eve to actually eat the fruit, but I think like Satan as a being is necessary. Like he didn't have that same kind of choice, which is also why I think they refer to Adam and Eve as kind of like God's like perfect creatures rather than the angels, because Adam and Eve have that ability to choose. They have that free will. I don't think the angels really have that ability.
What exactly was your question? What? And
For us to sin.
I feel like Satan. I feel like God wasn't like, I need Satan for this. I feel like he needed. I see Satan as a figurehead almost. That he put sin, I guess, on Satan. That he needs Satan to display what sin was to Adam and Eve. I don't feel like. I don't know, it's hard to explain because Adam and Eve needed to be shown what was right and wrong, and if there was no Satan, then there would just be sin. But how would they be able to display that? I guess besides going against God's will. So that's why Satan is there to show or kind of display what the evil side of good and evil was. But that's
What it looks like.
yeah, in a physical feature. And all that.
I feel like Eve fully obeys Adam and God, and by herself she can't do as much, but she kind of got her mindset changed as soon as Satan started poisoning her thoughts and dreams and showing her that there are other ways except obeying Adam and God. There are also a way to try a forbidden fruit. So in this way, I think that without Satan, there wouldn't be original sin.
And then kind of going off of Satan, my OQ was, do you think Satan wants to take revenge because he lost his battle against God, or because he was kicked out of heaven and like forced into hell? Which I kind of like view as like two different things. So it's almost like, does he want to take his revenge out on Eve because he lost like this big war against God and he's not able to like rule heaven or be on like the same plane as God, or does he want to take out the revenge because he's like upset that he no longer gets to live like in heaven and enjoy like those comforts?
I think both kind of intertwine. I mean, Satan. When we think of Satan, we think of sin. We think of evil, and he's very prideful, and two, he's very envious. Two of the 7 deadly sins, and I mean, for one, they're jealous of Eve. He's jealous of Eve, and wants to, I guess, kind of get revenge on that he's with who he's jealous on. So Eve and Adam, and one, he's very, very, very prideful, as we can see throughout the whole book, and it's kind of like he doesn't even necessarily want to be in heaven. He just doesn't want to be kicked out because he doesn't want to be. He knows God's more powerful than him, but he doesn't like the fact that God is kind of ordering him around, and he doesn't want to be told what to do and all that. So I think that's where the jealousy aspect and the pride aspect come into play, and that's why he wants to take revenge on him, because that's who he is. But that's my opinion.
Yeah, coming from this, I think I read before in some philosophy book that Satan says, "I would rather be king in hell than servant in heaven." So he kind of has this problem of following in a way.
Yeah, I really think it's just really a pride thing.
Yeah.
I don't think he really particularly enjoyed the joys of heaven, or, otherwise he wouldn't have even bothered to rebel, because he would have been like so happy, because that's like, what heaven is supposed to be. I think for him it's just about, being first and, being the best and, being at the top. And so I don't think it matters where he is. I think it matters if he's the most important.
I definitely agree with you guys that that like one of Satan's like big characteristics is that he's like very prideful and he has like a lot of hubris, and I think that is one of the big reasons that he ends up targeting Eve rather than Adam, is because when you look at the conversation that Adam and Eve had about whether or not Eve should go off in the garden alone with the serpent like roaming around, to me Eve seemed very like prideful and exemplified like a lot of hubris, thinking that she could handle herself and that she wouldn't like succumb to any traps or temptations or anything like that. And I think that Satan recognized that hubris in Eve and saw that as kind of like an opening for him to target her.
Yeah. I kind of viewed it as kind of like the prodigal son. I feel like, let's say, Satan rebels, but God didn't kick him out of heaven. He forgives him, all that stuff. Satan would have still rebelled again, regardless. But I don't think he would have been. I think this is just like salt on the wound, just kicking him out of heaven. Like, just go to hell, or go to hell. And
In addition to losing,
yeah, stay there forever. You're going to be the example of what Adam and Eve are not going to be.
Kind of like the figurehead, like you want to, like, don't go here.
That was an interesting point that Tommy made, though, about Mr. Gentry, about about how Satan went after Eve because Eve kind of showed like the same characteristic. I think that was like really important to notice how Eve initially, like, when she just first is introduced, she's very like in love with herself or whatever. Not overly so, but like it's there. The fact that it's there, that just seems like that seemed to be like the good place where Satan could hone in and just like like take over control of her mind.
Yeah, that, and also because, we talked about Eve being the weaker of the two. I feel like this is kind of going on a limb here, but I feel like Satan really wanted to show his power, and he knew that he was going to beat Eve, and wanted to take advantage of the weaker of the two, so he could, almost feel better about himself, and being his prideful self, that's what he wanted to do.
Wow, that's a foreshadowing
Yes.
right there.
Yeah.
And even Adam later on, after original sin, he called Eve a serpent also. It's this way shows that she's related to Satan.
Yeah, that kind of ties them together. That maybe they have the same qualities a little bit.
Yeah,
Obviously,
yeah.
not Eve is not comparable to Satan, but
Women.
like the.
Well, she came from the Adam, so.
Yeah, well, the qualities are there, and that's why Satan could get to her so easily.
So coming from this, I would like to ask a question. Did Adam had a choice to eat forbidden fruit or not? It's kind of in a way, did he have the choice to go against Eve's will or not?
Like if Adam was in Eve's shoes,
Yes.
I think it would have been played out differently, but I think it would have happened anyways. I just think of the part where Adam calls Eve like a mistake. He calls her a serpent. He like brushes her off, and then he like complains about like, oh, she was a rib, and she was a mistake. Why did God create you, or something like that? And I just think to myself, well, if she was a mistake, then you're a mistake too, because she came from you. And thinking about that, I feel like he would have made the same mistake anyways.
Yeah.
He's just as flawed.
I agree. I think that he's got plenty of flaws too, and even though I can't think of any right now, and that we just discussed that, Eve has like that initial feeling of, pride, like Adam will still have some flaw too. And even though it was easiest to go through Eve, I think that the devil still would have found something with Adam that was wrong enough where he could come in and like enter the mind and make him question and doubt God.
Yeah, I agree too. I think it still would have happened. Not only because I think Adam is an imperfect to make him. But I think also because I think it was like always God's plan that Adam and Eve and mankind, for that matter, know the difference between good and evil. I think that was a fundamental element of like mankind to know that difference. So even though they had to go through like the fall of man to reach that end, I think that was always God's intention. That was just like the way it had to happen.
Yeah, I mean, like you said, Adam is nowhere perfect, he's flawed. And I think a lot of it is curiosity. I mean, let's say you took Eve totally out of the picture. Let's say Adam withstood like the first temptation from Satan. Satan's smart enough and cunning enough that he'll come back, maybe in like a different form, not a serpent or something, but come back, tempt Adam again, and eventually he'll fall. And he'll pique his curiosity. He'll make him like he'll ask the same questions he asked Eve, like, "Do you really think you're gonna die?" and all that, because he's human, because he's old, and he'll ultimately fall also.
Yeah, I feel like that Eve subordinate to Adam, so in the end, Adam's may make his choices himself, but he knows better. And without Eve tempting Adam, I don't think he would choose evil by himself, because he knows God. He was there first, and he knows what's good, and God is good.
That's right. He did pray. He was all about God. When we first, we were introduced to him, and I think, he still would have done it anyways, because I think the sun came down to the garden, or was it God? Whatever it was, but he was scolding